Welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pen Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shanda Gore.
And welcome back to the Pen Leader Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about service above self. And today I have with me Cindy Binkley, who serves as the Gnomes Healthcare Regional Operations Manager, bringing more than 30 years of leadership experience to the role. She has a clinical background as a movement specialist, therapist. Cindy combines deep healthcare knowledge with a passion for operational excellence, patient-centered care. She's an engaged community leader, which I've known her as the former president of the Rotary Club of Toledo. And she also currently serves as the president of Lot Conlon Foundation and sits on 2 advisory boards, the Physical Therapist Assistant Program at Professional Skills Institute, and the Exercise Science Sports Medicine Advisory Committee for Penta Career Center. She does so much, and she is also a proud veteran, and she's dedicated more than 20 years to the 180th Air National Guard, and her motto is service above self. So without further ado, welcome, Cindy.
And I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So, you know what? I'm going to get right in and say thank you for your service. It's so appreciated, and all the work that you do, especially with Rotary, and then, of course, all these other service projects that you work on. But you have this day job as well, and it's so very important, and you're doing it in healthcare. And I'm going to have to just make sure the movement therapist. Can you explain a little bit about that in your day job and what you do?
Yes, I can. So movement therapist really is, was certified as a kinesiotherapist at University of Toledo. And kinesiotherapy started back in 1945 when all of the war veterans were coming back, and there were not enough physical therapists to treat our injured veterans. They started at the VA office, centers and specialized in movement, in education, and especially aquatic therapy. So that's really where I started, is as a kinesiotherapist, and I spent over 20 years clinically working before I moved on to totally being in the administrative role that I am. With that, I've used a lot of those skills as a kinesiotherapist or things that I've learned in my leadership role, because in healthcare, we're primarily there to treat patients. Sometimes people may forget that because you still have a bottom line, but really we're all there to treat patients. And that's really where I've always tried to find myself when I was treating, and also encourage our teams now that remember the reason that you're here. Remember why you really went to school to be a therapist is to help others. And when you're looking at your patients and you may find some reason that you get a little frustrated, maybe it's lack of progress, maybe it's lack of dedication, remember to keep trying to find another opportunity to get them engaged, and always look at them like could be one of your family members.
They probably really appreciate that level of empathy and showing that care when they come in the door.
For sure. That's what they're looking for. I mean, we're there to provide a service. And we, when you go to work in healthcare, you can't be thinking about yourself. You have to be thinking about the people that you're treating.
That's right. Now, your other role in the 180th, again, what leadership lessons have you carried from that role into your work in a civilian career?
Well, many. As being at the 180th, I was fortunate to be in the same section my whole career. So I worked in the services flight. There were many changes over the years, depending on what was happening out in the world, what squadron we fell under. So sometimes our mission would change. It may be support, it may be civil engineering, it may be something like that. But what I learned was that we all have a part to give. We have to kind of find something bigger than ourselves that we're working towards. So when I joined the 180th, I honestly was only going in for the college tuition benefit. I was 17, I went off to basic training, and I really had no intention of, making a career of, the 180th. But as time went on and I got to work with so many different great people, not just out there, but when we would deploy or go for training, you work with hundreds of different people all the time. And I learned a lot of lessons about service above self, about adaptability in the military. Even if we are just practicing different situations, you have to be very adaptable and be able to sometimes lead and sometimes follow. So those are some of the main things that I've taken from there and tried to, carry over in my civilian role as well.
Well, that's interesting about the lead and follow. When has there ever been a time when you looked and you said, I just don't have the ability to lead right now, and because of whatever the circumstances were, and then you found yourself in the follow position versus the lead?
I don't know if I look at it that clearly, but I would say that there are times that, in my roles, I've always had other levels of leadership above me. And sometimes you have to lead, you have to follow and not always know what the plan is. And you have to let the people that you're leading know that you will let them know what the plan is as soon as you know. But right now we're all just kind of waiting. And many times too, like even when you're in a training situation and you're the leader, you are having to let your teams do what they need to do. And you're just kind of sitting back and letting things roll out, no matter what.
Well, when you just mentioned about plan, and sometimes you don't always know what the full plan is because your leadership, like you just said, may have the plan, maybe have worked it all out, and they expect you to follow and to get to the goal, right?
Correct.
But I think it was very important what you just said about communicating to who's following you to make sure that they know that you will share the information when you can, when you know.
Exactly. Yep. Trying to keep everybody in the loop.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought of an instance of when the plan wasn't even clear at the leadership side? And think of an instance, or maybe you've been exposed or know of individuals who have struggled with this, but they themselves seem a little lost. Have you ever been in a position where you've had to help with that plan?
I would say probably experienced that most with the Rotary Club of Toledo. So my year as president was the first year that we're really coming out of COVID. So we had a lot of changes in the years prior. And with my work with the board and the different committees, we had to kind of test things out because everyone was looking at the world a little bit differently. And they were looking at our club differently too, how they wanted to participate, if they wanted to participate, if they could afford it. There was a lot of financial hardships for companies that usually sponsor our Rotarians and also them themselves. The activities that we were able to do, the grants we wanted to support, I would say that was probably where I experienced that the most.
I would say with that challenge, then they were looking to you because you were the president at the time. So you were leaning on your
board members,
your board members to help guide you. Then.
And the executive director quite a bit too.
Okay. Yes. Can you think of service above self? That is a perfect organization when we talk about that because that's the motto there too. You live by the motto, and this particular group also has that. Can you think of a time when that leadership, how that benefited others and how that worked?
A couple, personally, I can kind of tell you how I really came into that service above self. It was in the military, partly, but also with my parents. We grew up in Monclova, used to be a real small town. Not small enough anymore. Mm-hmm. And they were very involved in the community and, giving back to the community, participating on different committees within the township. And then also there was a couple gentlemen that didn't have any family in the area. And so they, kind of took them on to take care of. And in part, we all came along. I mean, we had to help, clean the house, take care of them, spend time, visiting. They'd drop us off and we'd have to visit and do, just certain things that it stands out even when you're a little kid. And then going on into the military kind of added to that. And then when I did hear about the Rotary at a different association meeting I was at, I'm like, I think that's what I want to do. I mean, I want to join this group. And just being able to participate in the different service above self activities, like for instance, all the work with the Glendale Fieldback School. This next week we have a camp at Camp Mayaconda for them, and we do like the Zoo Day. Those are really the ones that I like to participate in, seeing the excitement, and just with my own personal, work history, that's right up my alley. Kids with disabilities, I love that, and just being able to make a difference in someone's life. And sometimes too, it's just a financial difference. making sure that I give, to the foundation, make sure that, that I know that my money is being spread, a little bit further than I would be able to do individually.
I think that there's one thing too, because we have listeners in different countries and in a number of states. There is a Rotary almost in every corner of the world, and that what makes it very exciting because it's international, the International Rotary. And I've had a chance to interact with those that I'm traveling and I'm able to go and find the Rotary. And what's great about that goal of that service above self, that is permeates across all, it doesn't matter where you are because everyone's got service projects and they really put their time in. You have been doing it not only as volunteering, but again, as service and serving the country as well as in the role with healthcare. Do you see any thread of, besides that piece, but any other threads that may not be as common that are not in other positions? Because this one is these positions very clearly, they're all doing the same thing and it aligns well with what you want. But have you also experienced different parts of your roles that don't align as well with that? How do you manage that and how do you communicate that message?
Oh, I would say, yeah, maybe not just in the service above self, but almost all of the things that I learned in the military as a leader. I finished my career out as the superintendent of services. So it was overseeing all the different branches. With the dining, we did the dining facility, we did fitness, we did lodging, and you have to work budgets for that. The budgets are, the military works on a fiscal year, and the budgets come out. And if the money's not there, you find a way, you find new vendors, you find
Right.
new places to have the people stay. It's same as we do in the civilian life. We have a budget. We know that we're allowed this much money for our rent, for our salaries, for all of these things. So yeah, there's a lot of carryover with that. And also with people, creating relationships with people. You sometimes are managing a small group in the military, and the next thing you know, you're going to a training session and your group has more than quadrupled the number of people that you're managing and working with, and they're from all over the country. They're not just from Ohio. And just that really allowed me to be very adaptable, to learning how to communicate with people and just, trying to get you see the best in most people. So it's just like a good way to really build relationships. And I try to do that same thing with the people that I work with now. I think building relationships, whether it's with the people you work with, the people that are working for you, the people that you're partnering with, different vendors, you got to have a good relationship with them to get the best
That's
bang
right.
for your buck.
That's right.
I think those are a lot of carryover with those too.
Well, that leads me into my question about, what are the top 3 characteristics needed for leaders to be effective and successful? And I think you were naming some of them, but what would you say are the top characteristics that you think they would be?
My first, I think, is like integrity. I think you need to know that the people that you're working with are good people, have good values, are always going to be wanting to do the best for the company, for the people that they're working with, and sometimes even the service above self, maybe not so much for them looking out for themselves, and looking to, rise above in certain situations, have good integrity. Adaptability is a huge one, especially. I mean, it's always been big, especially like in the military. It was always big being adaptable to different schedules, different people, different locations, whatever it might be. Nowadays, working with the people that you're working with, their outlook on what their goals are for a successful career is different than what we are used to before. There was a lot of longevity before, but not so much. I think people try out quite a few different opportunities before they settle. And with the changes in AI, with technology, constantly, working through that. And I think COVID is over, but we still are, still working through some of the bumps of that. So being adaptable is super important. And lastly, I don't know if it's like a top 3 thing, but being a good communicator. I think communication is key to really keeping a good workforce, keep trying to work on that longevity, communicating back and forth, up and down, so that people really know what's going on and what the expectation is.
That's great. When we talk about pins and pin leader, the strength of character and the integrity that you just mentioned, and then being able to be adaptable, being able to pivot, have a plan, but pivot when you need to, And I think that last part about communication is so critically important. How can you not know what's going on, right, and not communicate it? And so the troops or the team need to know where you're going, and having that ability to do that and communicate it effectively. There's a lot of care that can happen with that too. I think people care what you're saying to them and how it's delivered. So those are great. So really, the last questions I have for you, which are I think the fun questions, is what are you watching and what are you reading?
Oh, well, people might be surprised, but I do try to read both professionally, professional development books, and then something to take my mind off or whatever. So currently, I am reading Shanda's book.
Awesome.
Yes, The Pin Leader Path. So I'm reading that right now and loving it. I'm a big John Maxwell fan. Breen Brown, I like her too. Recently finished Crucial Conversations. Again, I'd read it a long time ago, but read that again. And then just for fun, I like mystery kind of stuff. So I like James Patterson, Robin Cook. That I'm not reading anything right now. And sometimes I just kind of flip over to Nora Roberts for no reason.
To switch it up.
And I watch a lot of anything really Law and Order. I've always been a Law and Order fan, and drives my husband and my family crazy sometimes, but I do like it. Any crime, mystery, FBI, anything to just kind of shut my brain off for the most part. Every now and then I'll pop in something, or not pop it in anymore. Flip on something like a comedy or romance series and binge watch that. But yeah.
Well, do you ever catch our Murder, She Wrote? I'm a big Jessica fan.
Honestly, this is kind of on a side note, we stay at our dad's quite frequently, and Murder, She Wrote is on in the middle of the night because he only has cable. So I have watched a lot of that over the last year.
Any way you can get it in.
That's funny.
I just my mother used to watch it years ago, and I'd say, "Oh, Mom, don't watch that," and here I am watching it. So it's
I know.
So that's great. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and really sharing, especially from these three unique worlds, and bringing that all together under a leadership umbrella. Truly, those nuggets of thoughts and suggestions, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Shanda. I was happy to be here.
Excellent. And thank you to our listeners who are, grabbing hold of the show and sharing it and liking it. We appreciate you, and we hope that you will continue to do that. We'd also like to thank the sponsor, Jennifer Pensician, Edward Jones, financial advisor. She can guide you and when you are planning your future. So, of course, until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Mays & Associates Ltd., creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.